case anyone misses it and wants to hop back on later and watch it. Because I invited whoever wanted to join to this call, which I'm probably going to do with most moving forward. I really don't see much reason not to, but because of that, I want to take just a minute, introduce myself. I know most of you on the call. And so my name is Chase Williams, and I'm the operating principal of Keller Williams in Spokane, Keller Williams in the Tri-Cities, and that also includes some branch offices, Colville, Lewiston, Walla Walla, and others. So I'm going to actually change my name here. You guys can also rename yourself if you would like. Something funny, make my day. But I've been in real estate since about 2011 is when I got into real estate. Before that, I was in the corporate world. And I tell you that because I was really trained in business long before I knew anything about real estate. And my true passion in the business is teaching people how to be really intentional about how they grow and develop their real estate business. And part of that is thinking like business owners and thinking like a CEO, which is what we originally called this series, this think like a CEO mentality. But it's no different. You could replace CEO with high achiever or successful person, etc. Ultimately, teaching people to think like that is my true passion in the business, rather than just thinking like a salesperson, which is only selling houses. There's so much more to what we do than just selling houses. So that's kind of my passion inside of the industry. A little bit about myself. I've got 2 kids that are probably watching this upstairs, so they can critique me later. So just, rest assured that I've got lots of critics, around the training that I'm providing. 11 and 9 years old. I've been married to my beautiful wife, Casey, for almost 14 years. July 1st will be our 14th anniversary, and maybe we'll have like a virtual anniversary at this point, who knows, but I'm excited about whatever that might bring. When I'm not social distancing or talking about real estate or business, I love to be outdoors, and so that's a good thing for me during this period. And certainly I've never seen in my career, really my life, something like this. And I know maybe some of you have, and some of you haven't, but this is would you guys agree that if ever there was a time for working on the way we perceive life, the way we think, and strengthening our mindset, that this would be as good as any? Is that fair? Okay, yeah, me too. And by the way, I believe it's always a great time to be sharpening that sword, no matter what's happening. And yet it really highlights the idea of our mindset being incredibly important and powerful for us as people, leaders, family members, and business owners. So I want to draw something really quickly that maybe some of you have seen, and I'm betting some of you haven't. I'm going to push that camera down just a smidge there. It looks kind of like this. Everybody see that triangle? Yeah, okay, good. So we called it, this is something that a good friend of mine taught me. His name is you in real estate may have heard the name Ben Kenny. He's an agent out of Bellingham that has a massive organization and sells over 2,000 transactions a year across the country. But he taught me this, and it's called the control triangle. Control triangle. Is the writing backwards for you, or is it forwards? Can you read that? Okay, good, awesome. The control triangle, the concept of this is all about successful people focusing only on the things that they can control, right? The control triangle. Is it safe to say there's a lot of things happening right now that we absolutely have zero control over? Yeah, lots of things, right? And that's always the case, by the way, whether it's the economy or interest rates or the coronavirus. There's only certain things we can control, right? One is like staying at home and social distancing. We're in control of that, but as this thing affects us as a country, as a state, we're really not in control of that. So the concept is successful people don't focus time and energy, very little, if not none, on things that they cannot control. And there's really a few key things to focus time and energy on. So the foundational piece of the control triangle is successful people understand that the number one thing they need to control is how they think. How they think. Number one, that's why it's the foundation of the model, right? And we're going to talk a lot about that. We call it our 6 personal perspectives, but it's how we think. We can't do anything differently until we first think differently. It all starts with thinking, right? So we're going to start there. Once successful people understand, or rather start controlling how they think, and they spend time and energy on how they think, the next step as we start to master that is they're gonna be in control of how they spend their time, right? And again, thinking comes first, because you don't know how to spend time differently until you've thought about what's important differently. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, but that's kind of the next level of the control triangle. First, we control how we think, then we control how we spend our time. Third, we control who we're around, who we allow ourselves to be influenced by, who we listen to on social media or even Zoom calls, right? You've got to make a very clear determination on who is going to speak into your life, who's going to speak into your business, who you take advice from. This one to me it touches really close to home, because I've learned over the years the value of the right environment. And quite candidly, you can't place a dollar amount on it. You can't really quantify it very well, but it is exponential, right? And in a day and age, this is my soapbox moment when it comes to the who, right? In a day and age where everyone seems to be an influencer on social media, or seems to want to be, you have got to really be intentional about who you decide to listen to, right? Otherwise, if you're not being intentional about it, the person who is speaking the loudest tends to be the person we listen to, and that's not a good judge of the value that person may be delivering necessarily. So you want to be really intentional with who you surround yourself with. Now in business, when we start controlling how we think, we're going to spend a lot of time on that today, how we spend our time, which is absolutely critical, and who we're around and we're influenced by. What shows up in business is profit or money. And how we spend our money is also something we're in control of. Where can we get the most return in our business? What brings the value to our business or activities that money can influence, right? How you spend your money is important in business. If you do these 3 things well, money will show up. How you spend that is kind of the ultimate level of how to have a bigger and successful life. Now, we're talking about business today, but you could replace money with love. I'll draw a heart. That's my best attempt at a heart. And here's what I mean by that. You can use this model in a relationship, right? Whether it's with a spouse, whether it's with a child, whether it's with anyone you really care about, you could use this model in your spirituality, right? First, you have to think differently about what you want to accomplish and why. Then you can be more intentional and control how you spend your time around those things, who you spend your time with. Whatever you want can actually show up in abundance. So as an example, if I want to be a better husband to my wife, Casey, I need to first think about what that looks like and why that's important to me, right? And then would you agree that if I truly desire to do that, the time that I spend with her, or preparing to spend time with her, or writing her a love note, would that be important to be in control of how I spend my time, rather than just letting it happen, hoping that love happens at random, right? And then would it be important who I spend time with? And not just Casey, my wife, but if I want to be a better husband, would I want to spend time with crappy husbands or with really great husbands who I look up to and can learn from, right? Would I want to read books about people who have had poor marriages, or read books about people who have had strong marriages, right? Do you see my point, right? This is a model that can be valuable for anything. So this is the control triangle. This is a powerful, powerful concept that we're gonna kind of dive into today on some more practical application. But again, we're teaching how to think, and even this concept here is a big one. So I hope that helps you. we're going to dive into the 6 personal perspectives, which are all about the foundational piece here. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this. I'm going to stop for a second. Who's got a question or a comment? I want to make sure I can still hear you. It sounds like you can hear me well. You have to unmute yourself. Who's got a question or a comment about the control triangle or what we just covered there for a couple of minutes? I got a full cup of coffee here. I can wait all day for somebody to ask a question.
Face, it's Yvette. I've seen this triangle many times, but I really like how you incorporated it into your personal life.
Awesome. Thank you, Yvette. Anybody else? Okay, let's dive in. We're going to talk about the 6 personal perspectives and how we think. I'm going to share my screen with you. We got a presentation that we're going to actually go through. And I'm going to ask you to give me the thumbs up when you can see my screen. It's a red presentation here. All right, you guys got it. I'm just waiting for the hammer to drop on technical difficulties. So far, we're kind of nailing it. Hey, I'll take it. Okay, 6 personal perspectives, and this is how we really define the way we think. So these are just emblems of the 6 personal perspectives we're going to go through. And what they are, the first one is self-mastery. The second one is the 80-20 principle. The third one is E to P, as we call it. The fourth one is staying learning based, right? And the fifth one is removing limiting beliefs. So that's step 5 there. You see the X in the kind of the thought pattern, removing limiting beliefs. And the 6th one is being accountable. So we're going to go through these each one by one and talk a little bit about them and how we can practically apply these to our life. Now I'm going to try to move this bar where I can see all of you to the bottom. There we go. Perfect. Now it's not blocking the slides. So step number 1 in 6 personal perspectives, and that is committing to self-mastery. And what high achievers understand is that any endeavor they choose to undertake is certainly going to require them to master a certain number of things, but particularly themselves, right? So let's talk about self-mastery for a second. This is actually how we define self-mastery on the next slide here, is the possession of great knowledge, skills, and habits that make you the master of you. Now, let me ask you a question. Does self-mastery sound to anyone like it might be just a piece of cake overnight process? Or has anyone like me found that self-mastery might actually be one of the hardest things to master on the planet? What are your thoughts? Give me some feedback or type in the chat box. What's your journey of self-mastery been like? Easy or hard?
I think it's something that you're always trying to do. I mean, you never actually master yourself. You're always trying to make yourself better.
That's absolutely true. I believe that too, right? It's actually a journey. Self-mastery is not a destination, because I would hope that you feel like you never arrive there. There's always room for progress or improvement, right? Whether it's in business or anything else. I'll go back to the example of being a better spouse. If I came home today, actually, I never left my home today, but let's assume it was a normal day and I came home and I told my wife, Casey, I said, honey, I've got great news for you. I've arrived. I've officially arrived as a husband. I have mastered this husbandry thing, and there's zero chance I can ever improve or get better. How do you think my wife might respond to that statement? Not well, right? That would be almost feel like a letdown, right? So I think you're right, Patrick. This idea of self-mastery is a journey. It's also incredibly important, because here's a tough question, right? Those of you who know me well know that sometimes I just cut straight to the point or cut straight to the bone because I want it to have impact on you and have it cause you to think. If you can't first master yourself, how in the world do you expect to master anything else? Right? And I say that because I understand that self-mastery is actually difficult. It's challenging. It requires us to look internally. And so the way that we articulate what that is, the possession of great knowledge, skills, and habits that make you the master of you. Now, what I want you to to kind of get through this, and here's the next slide, is the things that you need to do when you commit to achieving self-mastery, when you commit to the journey that has no destination, when you commit to constant improvement of your personal self, right? Number one is you need to know your goals. And frankly, a lot of people never actually spend time enough to articulate their goals for themselves, let alone other people. In essence, they're just wandering around in the desert like the Israelites with no particular goal in mind. And that's not a great plan for getting anywhere that you would want to go, particularly in self-mastery. Number two is know your strengths and weaknesses. And this is again, this is the challenging part for some of us. This requires a lot of internal self-evaluation, reflection, thought, right? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And there's some tools that we have for this, right? Like at Keller Williams, we use one called the KPA, or Keller Personality Assessment. A lot of you know the DISC profile or strengths finders. There's a lot of these tools that actually will help you self-identify what your natural behavioral style is, and then what that relates to in strengths or weaknesses, right? And here's what I want you to understand about the self-evaluation process. You need to be really honest about your self-evaluation. Again, not easy, important. Be really honest. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Everyone has both, and that's actually perfectly fine. What you can do when you start to understand them at a deep level is you can understand, in what ways do these strengths and or weaknesses help or hinder me in the pursuit of my goals? Number one, how does this strength help or hinder me in the pursuit of my goal? How does this weakness help or hinder me in the pursuit of my goal? And that'll change based on the situation and based on the goal. But be really honest with yourself about that. And then step three, know how to work with both your strengths and weaknesses to reach your goals. And we just covered that, right? That's key. So that's why the honesty part really matters. And what you want to understand about, well, let me tell you a story for a second. Building habits around this, your goals, your strengths and weaknesses, and how they help or hinder you on the pursuit of your goals. There's a really great tool that you can use if you're not already. And that tool is a age-old tool called a journal. And I strongly, strongly recommend that if you haven't built a habit around journaling, use the next 2 weeks of social distancing, if necessary, for a catalyst to begin journaling. And I'll share my story. It took me years to try, or keep, starting and stopping to build a real habit around journaling. And I understood the value of it. It just took me a long time to actually build a habit around it. And since having done that, probably about 3 years ago now, 2.5, 3 years ago, I share this story occasionally because I hope that it has impact on someone else that would like to start journaling. In a strange but powerful way, my journal has become like my best friend, or at least one of my best friends, because I get everything that's in here, all the craziness that's in here, out into the journal. And it's like I'm having a dialogue about my thoughts and my strengths and my weaknesses, what's concerning me, what's exciting me, what's happening in my life. Quite frankly, no one on the planet knows as much about me as my journal does. Not even close, not even my wife. And that's not intentional. That's just, when you're writing daily and getting everything in your head out on paper, it's amazing how those words will actually impact you back. It's amazing how when you're worried about something and you get it out on paper, it has no power anymore. It's amazing when you're excited about something and you get it out on paper, the additional power it carries, right? And this is a really strong tool for pursuing this actual journey of self-mastery with intentionality, right? Because self-mastery is not going to happen by default. So I really encourage those of you that aren't journaling just to start, right? Don't overthink it. Write one sentence, write one paragraph, start doing a little every day. You'll be glad that you did. And that's a tool that I use to, again, continue on this journey of self-mastery. Any questions about self-mastery? It's the highest return. Working on yourself is the highest return that you can ever get in life, in my opinion, right? So that's step one of the 6 personal perspectives, self-mastery. Step 2 is the 80-20 principle. And the 80-20 principle was actually developed by a guy named Pareto, who was an Italian a long time ago, back in the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, but a long time ago. And what he found was that 20% of the Italian population actually held 80% of the wealth in the country. And this concept, this 80-20 principle, has been proven over and over and over again, right, in the world. And here's what I want you to understand. The 80-20 principle is designed to help us bring focus, but I want you to think of the 80-20 principle. It's called a principle for a reason, right? It should be called a law, in my opinion, because it's like the law of gravity. It always shows up. It's a pattern of predictable imbalance in life. Now, let me ask you this, for those of you who are on the call, right? For those realtors that are on the call, is it a pretty safe bet that 20% of the realtors in any given market are selling 80% of their real estate, give or take? I would argue that sometimes it's even a higher imbalance, 10-90, depending, right? Depending on the market, depending on a number of things. Stephanie, is it safe to say that 20% of the title companies in any given town do about 80% of the business? Yeah, right? Like, so the reason I ask those questions is you have to actually accept this as a principle before you can leverage it yourself. It's like water finding its level. It truly is. And there's no reason to avoid it or not accept it, because once you do, then you can use it to your advantage. And we're going to talk about how to do that. That's called the 80-20 principle. And in essence, it says when we're focused on the 20% that matters, we get 80% of the results that we want, right? So when we're focused on fewer things that actually matter, we get greater results. And I'll share an example with you that most of you will understand from our industry. Again, I don't know everyone who's on the call, but you'll understand this in your own business or industry. In real estate, I've had the good fortune and pleasure of coaching and teaching an incredible amount of real estate agents over the last 8 years, and also some of the best real estate agents in the country, across the country. And that's been an awesome opportunity and privilege for me. But here's what I've found. Sometimes I'll talk to an agent, right? I'm learning about their business. I'm understanding where they're at in the business or their needs. And, you know, they have this word that they use. And funny thing is, we all actually overuse this word, but the word is busy.
Mm-hmm.
Busy. They're busy. I'll ask them how their business is going, and they're like, oh my gosh, so busy. Busy, busy, busy. Busy as a bee, right? And then I'll say, oh, tell me more about that. Well, you know, gosh, I'm working 70 hours a week. I'm working 7 days a week, late at night, early in the morning. I haven't taken a vacation in 6 months. I haven't had a day off in 6 months, et cetera, right? This is how they're describing their level of busyness. Sometimes I'll then ask the agent, well, okay, I can appreciate that. Share with me how many transactions you've done in the last year. And a lot of times the number is very low, relatively speaking. And so what the challenge is that agent is being truthful. They are really busy. They're focusing on everything as it matters equally, and that's just not how things exist. Now, let's contrast that. I'll oftentimes talk to really great agents who are doing a much higher number of transactions. Relatively speaking, let's say 8 to 12 in a year would be a smaller amount, and 40 to 50 would be a larger amount. That's just a number I'm using to illustrate the difference. And I'll ask that agent how busy they are, or how many vacations they've had, or how are they managing their schedule and calendar. And what's funny is that agent is working probably about half or a little more than the agent that's doing a lot less business, the busy bee, if you will. Can you guys all relate to that in your world, in your life, in your business, in your industry? Yes. Right? It's all of a sudden, sometimes the highest achievers seem to have the most free time. Why the heck is that? And one of the main reasons is they have mastered, or on the way to mastering, this 80-20 principle. right? You have to understand that all things do not matter equally. And high achievers always have a focus. They use the 80-20 principle as the method of their focus. All things do not matter equally. And so we've got to identify what actually does matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as we move forward through the 80-20 principle and you commit to the 80-20 principle, you want to use these three pieces, right? We're going to cover these in a little bit more depth, but one is focus on the 411. That's a tool to focus on what's actually important, not all the things, right? All the things can happen only after what's important happens. So I'll show you that tool in just a second. Number two is to set SMART goals. And some of you have heard this terminology before, maybe some of you haven't, but a SMART goal needs to be specific, very specific goal, right? Some people, like if I ask, hey, what's your goal? And someone says, I just want to have a great life. Awesome, me too, but tell me more about that. You got to be specific so that you can then you know the things that you need to do to actually achieve it versus this very broad, existential idea of what you want your life to look like. That's not a bad thing to have. It's just not going to lead you there intentionally, right? So you need a specific goal. You need it to be measurable, right? It has to be measurable because that way you know if you're on track or not, or you can make adjustments when necessary. It needs to be action-oriented, right? I love the concept of powerful thinking and putting energy out into the world. Love that. And it had better be action-oriented, or you're just not doing it with intention. I can sit on my couch all day long and wish for $1 million, and I'd probably put a lot of energy out there around $1 million. I doubt it's going to show up on my doorstep if I'm not doing anything to cause it to show up. Got to be realistic, right? A lot of people would like to argue this one, but the SMART goal would be it's realistic. It doesn't need to be easy, by the way. Don't hear realistic as easy. It needs to be possible. And if you look at others that have gone before you, almost anything you can imagine is possible. Someone's already done it, right? So don't overthink that one. And then time bound, right? A SMART goal should be time bound. Why do you think there's value in it being time bound? Somebody share with me what your thoughts are. Why do we want a SMART goal to be time bound?
Yeah, Chase, I would say that one of the important parts of that is sort of built-in accountability.
Love that. Yeah, I would use the word pressure, right? Like there's a time pressure in order to get into action in a measurable way around specific things that are achievable to accomplish the goal, right? And not bad pressure, good pressure. Otherwise, it's like, well, when is that going to happen, right? So I think you're right, and it's like I think about it as the kids have been home the last couple of weeks from school, and Casey and I are having them do some more regular chores, and it's kind of like asking my 9-year-old son to take out the trash. If I'm not pretty specific on when I'd like that done, that might happen 5 days from now. Is that fair? And yet sometimes we set goals this way. We're like, okay, I'm going to become a millionaire. When? Right? That's just one of the pieces of these SMART goals. And then the third is creating a productivity tool. And we're going to talk about what that actually looks like. And in our time today, we're going to talk about time blocking and what that looks like. So let's go a little bit farther. I talked about the 411. And this is an action goal worksheet. And the numbers of 411 ultimately say that you have one annual goal that can be broken down into what needs to be accomplished this month to be on track for that annual goal, right? It's time bound. And then can then be further broken down to the 4 weeks in the month. So 411. Does that make sense? And remember, what goes on this 411 are the important things, the critical things that need to happen for you to be on track to accomplish your goal. This is not a place to create a checklist, because a checklist oftentimes is not well prioritized. Those are just things that need to get done. If you were to build a checklist, which I'm not arguing against, build a checklist, identify the most important thing on that checklist, and transfer that to your 411, which is what you see behind me. Here's the concept. What you see on your screen is the actual tool, right? And what that will help you with is staying focused on your 20%, because the 20% is what goes on your 411. Now, as you look at this tool on the screen, what you're going to be placing on the annual goals, right? You can see there's a business side, there's a personal side, are SMART goals that you want to accomplish this year. And you're going to break those down into SMART goals for this month. And then on the weekly goals, what I want you to think of in terms of the weekly goals, when you break it down into the 4 weeks, is actually the action items. So you've got your SMART goals, but then during the week is like, what specifically are you doing? They should be action-oriented, action goal worksheet, to make sure that through week 1, you're on track to hit the monthly goal. And if you're not by week 2, then you can make an adjustment because it's measurable, right? Because we either have to catch up or we're on track for the monthly goal. So a simple example might be, if I wanted to sell, and let's walk this through the paces quickly. If I wanted to sell 24 houses in 2020, well, one is 24 in 2020. Now, let me ask you, is that a specific goal? Yeah, pretty
Yes.
specific. Measurable. Do I know if I'm on track or not? Is it
Yes.
action oriented?
Yes. Oh,
Maybe. Okay, maybe. We're going to make it action oriented through the process of this 411, but as it stands, it's not really. That's kind of like saying I want to make $1 million this year. We're not there yet, but we're going to go there, right? Is it realistic?
Yeah.
You guys think I can do that?
Yes.
Don't answer that. If you think the answer is no, don't answer that. And is it time bound? Right? This year in 2020. So if I want to sell 24 houses in 2020, how many do I need to sell each month?
2.
Yep, 2 a month. And I use that number on specifically because it makes this process easy. But now we have to go to the action-oriented part. So what am I going to do in week 1 of the first month? Right? And again, you can see that the form is built like that. 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. What might I do that's action-oriented in this first week that would put me on track to sell 2 houses that month?
Set,
Put it out there. What could it be?
set an appointment a day with a buyer.
Okay, awesome. Set an appointment a day. Per day. Got it. What else? What else might it be? Help me out. That's a great one. What else? What else could I do that's action-oriented that would be putting me on pace to sell 2
Spend
houses
2
in a month?
hours of lead gen a day.
How many?
2 hours of lead generation a day.
2 hours of lead generation a day. I love that. And that could be in multiple ways. 2 hours of lead gen per day. That could be calling my sphere of influence and checking in with them, how they're doing through this whole mess. Could be door knocking, cold calling, internet leads, open houses. There's lots of methods for lead gen. If I did 2 hours a day, that'd be a pretty good action step to be on track. Sell 2 houses a month. Does that make sense? So this tool is meant to be the most important things, because guess what else? If I'm actually selling 2 houses a month, or I've been on track for that, or I'm in production, is that all I have to do today? Is set an appointment and lead generate for 2 hours? Is my day over after that? No, man. I've got to put a lockbox on the property. I've got to follow up with the lender. I've got to show property to current buyers. I've got to negotiate an offer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's my checklist. That's not my 20%. What we just put on this week on the 411 is my 20%. That's focus, right? These things are more important than all those other things. All those other things may need to happen. They're just not as important. And this will keep you from mistaking movement for achievement, right? Don't mistake movement for achievement. Don't mentally be like that agent who tells me all the time that they're incredibly busy and they're really not achieving at the level they're capable of. I don't say that judgmentally, right? Like, I get the good pleasure of helping and coaching and guiding them to achieve at a higher level, but they're mistaking movement for achievement. Those are two really different things, and this tool will help you do that. Now, some of you may be thinking, it's too simple, Chase. Like, there's no way that this has that much value. And that is why it does have this much value, because it's not overcomplicated. Anybody can go through this process, right? Simple is key. They say complexity is the enemy of execution. Complexity is the enemy of execution. So use a simple tool, use the 411. Now, what I want you to know is it's one thing to grasp this concept of the 80-20 principle. It's another to apply it. And so time blocking is what we use to apply what was on our 411, right? This is our productivity tool, this concept of time blocking. Because again, that could just be a piece of paper we filled out. If we don't put time on our calendar to actually implement that, like Patrick said, 2 hours, and Noah said, I got to set one appointment. That takes time, right? And so there's another law that we often use, a bold law actually, and this law says if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. It's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. So what you want to do is take the action items from your 411 and put those in your calendar weekly. They should be literally in your calendar that you follow weekly, however, whatever tool you use for a calendar, dedicating specific periods of time to specific purposes, specific activities. So this is one question again, this is kind of like a cutting to the bone question that I'll sometimes ask people who want to achieve it at higher levels. And I'm assuming that's all of you because you're on this call. Do you know exactly what you're going to be doing at 11:39 on a Tuesday, 6 months from now? I'm going to argue that for the most part, you should know exactly what you're going to be doing at 11:39 on a Tuesday, 6 months from now, because it's the first part of the day, the first part of the week, and it should probably be spent doing your 20%, which rarely ever changes. So top performers actually build lead generation into their calendar in perpetuity. They don't have to put it in there each time every week, because it's the same time every day, every week, because the 20% rarely changes. Does that make sense?
Yep,
So
that's
if I
good.
look at my calendar, the time I have allocated for lead generation, the time I have allocated for teaching meetings, the time I have allocated to meet with agents is already booked into my calendar out forever. I don't ever put an end time on it until I modify my calendar, which does happen occasionally. So if I look at my calendar, I'll know. Now, this is accountability right here. I'm going to show you. I'm going to hit escape, and I'm going to show you my calendar if I can really quickly. I'll show you what I mean, just to kind of to illustrate my point. So here's my calendar. This is what it looks like this week so far. This is March, right? Now I'm going to go out a few months. Look at my calendar. April, May, June.
I don't think we can see it.
Hold on.
Okay.
Resume share. Oh, thank you for saying that. So here's my calendar. I'm going to go back to today. Maybe. Here we are, March 24th. And I'm just going to scroll through April.
I don't think we can see it, Chase. Anybody else? Maybe it's just me. No one can see it.
Nope.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. For some reason, every time I go to a different screen other than the presentation, it goes away from the sharing. And we can fix it. How about now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, got it.
Okay, so here's what I mean, right? Like, this is today, the 24th of March, and I'm just going to scroll through again. You see where I have all my important appointments scheduled: lead generation, recruiting time, thinking time. My wife will appreciate this one. Look on Wednesday, May 20th, date night. right? Now, it goes longer than half an hour, just so you know. That's just the time I know I need to leave the office so I don't get in trouble for being late to date night. But you see my point, right? Like, I want you to think about time blocking in this way. Not, and again, that you see open times in there. I make adjustments every week, don't get me wrong. But the most important things I need to do, the 20%, are going to be pretty much the same 20% in 6 months from now. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So give me a thumbs up if that's a different way of you thinking about your calendar into the future than maybe you've thought before. All right, cool. I like that. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And
While you're prepping that, Chase, one thing that my coach has shared with me, she challenged me to time block every hour or hour and a half or half an hour, whatever it looks like. But for myself, in fact, I think I saw in yours, there was a yellow one that said open. So like I actually time block my openings and color code them. So I just know if I see yellow, I know that's an open slot. So her challenge to me was to fill every moment just as an exercise.
love that. And yeah, you're exactly right, Rick. I mean, all those are appointments. A lot of those are appointment slots or classes or meetings. As we get closer, I fill in the purpose for the meeting or the person I'm going to be meeting with, right? Just like you said. But I know that at 2 o'clock on a Thursday, I'm going to be meeting with an agent. Okay, back to the screen share as I'm learning through how to use this a little more efficiently. You guys see the presentation again?
Yep, you're
All
good.
right, cool. Now let's get back to where we were here, and we'll keep pushing forward. So time blocking is critical. Take your 411, put it in your calendar, and if you're confident that those are the things that are always going to be important, put it in your calendar forever, right? If something changes, you can remove it. Okay, so that's number 2. Step 3 is what we call E to P. E to P. And what we mean by that is moving from being entrepreneurial, E, to being purposeful, P, E to P, right? So let me ask you guys a question. So if you're on mute for right now, everyone on the call, take yourself off of mute. This is going to be an interactive portion of the training, and you guys have been great so far. But I'm going to need a bunch of you to chime in really simultaneously. So go ahead and take yourself off of mute. And here's what I want you to do. When you do things that come naturally, or what we would call entrepreneurial, how does it feel when you do things that come naturally to you? Describe some words about how you feel.
Easy.
Comfortable.
Keep going.
Comfortable.
Easy, comfortable. What else?
No
Normal.
stress-free.
Stress-free, I like it.
Mhm.
What else?
Routine.
Lazy.
Say that one again, the last one.
Lazy.
Lazy, yeah. It's like so easy, it's lazy. Feels lazy. What else? Anything? So this is natural. Right now, okay, so that's entrepreneurial, right? When we do things that come natural, that's kind of how we feel. Now, what about when we do things that are unnatural? How do we feel? How do you feel? Throw some words out to describe how you feel when you're doing something that comes very unnatural.
Anxious.
Uncomfortable.
Stress.
Stressed, uncomfortable. What else?
Nervous.
Nervous. What else?
You have self-doubt.
Self-doubt. Doubtful. What else?
Apprehensive.
Yeah.
Stretched.
Say that one again.
Stretched.
Stretched. Yeah. Clunky. Okay, now, do you see how much easier those words came, those unnatural feelings came, than even the ones when we're doing something natural? They came much quicker. Did you notice that?
Mhm.
The reason is that obviously when you're doing things unnatural, you feel it much more intensely, right? And you feel these words that you can't read because my handwriting's terrible, much more intensely when you're doing things that unnatural. So this is an important point because it's unnatural, because it feels like this. These are words that as human beings, we are built to avoid, right? So when we start doing things that are unnatural, which is we're arguing for that being important, then we're going to feel these things and we're going to want to avoid them, right? And so here's what high achievers know. High achievers are always looking for the purposeful way. By doing this, they break through the ceiling of their natural behavior. The ceiling of their natural behavior. Now, in real estate, we have a lot of realtors on the call. This is for anybody. Do all realtors in, let's say, Washington State for a minute, or in your state, do realtors carry the exact same real estate license to start with, right? Real estate license, everybody's got one. Some have gone on to have a managing broker license, but in essence, all realtors have the same license and opportunity in the business. Now, do all realtors make the same amount of money?
No.
No, they don't, right? So it's an equal opportunity, unequal reward business. And by the way, success in life is equal opportunity, unequal reward in life. What it's illustrating is that we all have different ceilings of achievement, different levels of ceilings of achievement. The similarity we carry is we all have a ceiling of our natural behavior. And if we truly want to break through that, like a high achiever, we're always going to look for the purposeful way. And by doing this, break through the ceiling of our natural behavior. And now there's actually a process for doing this. Remember, it doesn't always feel awesome right away, so we're going to naturally back away from it. There's a process to push through. And here's what that looks like, right? This is the 5 steps to getting purposeful, moving from E to P. Let's look at these 5 steps together. And then we're actually going to do, go through these on your own, right? So if you have a piece of paper and a pen there, you'll need that. But step 1 is focus. And that's writing down your goals and focusing on the 20%. We've covered that, right? You've got to find focus. Step 2 is find strategic options. So here's the questions you would ask. Once you found focus and you know what you want to accomplish, ask, how can this be done? Ask, are there different or better ways to do it? Right? So you're seeking for strategic options. Right now, I'm here to tell you folks that there's probably not too many things that are going to wind up on your goal list that no one else on the planet has ever accomplished. So let me know and unmute yourself and let me know if you have a specific goal that you're pretty confident that no one ever in the history of man has accomplished. You want to accomplish something that no one's ever done. Like maybe you want to set a Guinness Book of World Records for how many Zoom calls you can do in a single day. I don't know. What, does anybody got a goal like that? I'd love to hear it. And all joking aside, I think that'd be cool if you did. Okay. So in other words, most all of our goals, 99% of them, are something that someone else has already accomplished before us. So we've got to find strategic options. And in the information age, it's easier to do than ever, right? There's this thing called Google. You might have heard of it. Now we're calling it a thing, and we go to it for information. My point is that you can get a lot of information about strategic options from a lot of different sources. That's just one. Step 3 is look for a model to follow. Don't recreate the wheel. Once you find how it can be done, attend training that teaches you to get where you want to go. And you guys are doing that right here on this call as an example. And then identify mentors or people who have done it. Right? We've kind of established that for the most part, someone's done it. So who is that? Who's willing to guide, mentor, coach me through that process? Right? Step 4 is install systems. Talked a little bit about some of the systems. So time block, practice scripts, create checklists, and then test the systems. Make sure the systems you install work consistently and effectively. We're going to go through an example of this in a minute, but for now, that's step 4. And then step 5 is bring in accountability. We're going to talk more about this today. But accountability is measuring what you do, keeping track of it, and having an accountability partner. I would tell you that this is the most missed step. Step 5 is the most missed step in business, in life, in people's journey to be successful, and however they define that, is they've not brought in enough accountability. It's most missed, particularly in industries like real estate, where we're independent contractors and we're commission based, and hell, we're Americans, right? Like we're do-it-yourselfers. We like to pick ourselves up by the bootstraps and get her done, you know. And by the way, like that's an incredible spirit, but understand that if you're lacking accountability around it, you're actually missing the boat altogether as it pertains to being purposeful and having a higher level of success. So those are the 5 steps. Now, what I want us to do is go through these with one of your goals. So I want you to think of one of your goals. We're gonna take about 5 minutes to do this. Again, this curriculum is designed very specifically, going through these pieces of this workshop style, if you will. This activity is put in here very intentionally because it's going to help you internalize and understand using these steps. So write down one of your goals, any goal, write it down, piece of paper in front of you, and then go through this 5-step process. What's the 20%? So that's focus of activities. How are you going to do this? What are your strategic options? Look for a model to follow. Is there training you can attend or a mentor who can help? Install systems. What systems can you install? How will you time block? What are they? And then how will you track your progress? Who will hold you accountable? So take about 5 minutes. Stick with me here. This is important. This activity will help you internalize this process and go through these questions around one of your goals, any goal you choose. You guys are awesome. I can see you working. Those of you with your cameras on, I'll be glad you did. Couple more minutes here. This is actually a test of if you're willing to be purposeful even during the class here. You won't learn this stuff entrepreneurially, trust me. They only let me teach this class because I've screwed up more than anyone, so I've had to learn the hard way. You can cheat off of learning from me. Couple more minutes. I'm going to step away for about 1 minute, be right back, and dive back into it. So if you can finish up, that'd be great. If not, you'll have plenty of time later. Okay, guys, who would like to share one of their goals in this process they went through? Who'd like to share one?
I can share.
Go
I
for it, bud.
said I want to, now in current times, still sell 60 homes in 2020.
Okay. So what are the 20% of activities that you must do to accomplish the goal?
Well, it's what we always talk about. We've been talking about it. Lead gen daily. And now I have to set one virtual appointment daily.
Okay. Love that. And how are you going to do that? What are your strategic options for setting one appointment virtually daily?
You said it. Stick to my calendar.
Okay. What tools will you use
I'm going to use
to have a virtual appointment?
I'm going to use Zoom, or I'm going to use FaceTime. I'm going to use whatever's working that works for the client.
Perfect. So you've got several options there. Zoom, FaceTime, Google Hangouts is another great one. Free option, right? So, and it's good to have a few because FaceTime doesn't work if you don't have an iPhone, et cetera, right? You got a few backups. What's a model to follow? Is there training you can attend, a mentor who can help?
Yeah, well, we're on a training with you right now, and there seems to be trainings every day from KW that you can hop on nowadays.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to seek one out from someone who has already listed and sold homes virtually. I know that agents have done that. There's an agent, Wes Madden, up in Alaska, who all of his appointments are either done in the office or done virtually because of the remote nature of Alaska. So this is an unprecedented territory for certain people. So training, mentor, right? What systems can you install?
You know, I found some scripts on KW Connect that are relevant to the times in setting virtual appointments, and we use those in our script training class already today.
Great. And you might want to test that those scripts are working. You want to test that the technology that you're going to use is working. And then bringing in accountability is step 5.
Well, it's time to like track my numbers and some commercial on an online track sheet that, you know, like my EA has access to, meeting with other agents that I meet with and with you.
Okay, awesome. So you've got some accountability built in there already.
Yep.
Have you set your one virtual appointment yet today?
I have not set my one virtual appointment yet today.
Will you be willing to text me at the end of the day and let me know if you set your one virtual appointment for today?
Yes, I will do that.
All right, there you go. That's accountability, folks. And that's Noah's goal, not my goal for Noah. Sometimes people mistake accountability for people telling you what to do. I didn't just tell him what to do. He told me what he was going to do, and I'm willing to help hold him accountable to his own goal, right? Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, let's keep going. So step 4, that's step 3, move from E to P, and that's the process with which you can do it. By the way, if anyone wants these slides, I can send them to you. They're available, right? So you can just message me or email me or text me, and I can get you the slides. So we'll keep going. Step 4, be learning based. Be learning based. This is how high achievers think. right? The knowledge, so a learning-based individual is an individual who's made the decision to use effective learning as the foundational piece for their action plan to develop their life, right? And the key is staying learning-based to achieve mastery. That's the difference. Staying learning-based to achieve mastery, not just a cursory understanding of something. That's very different than mastery, right? So a lot of times people, they're curious to learn for surface level information, and once they receive that, they think that's all there is, but they're never actually mastering any of it. They're kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none, right? That is not a learning-based individual in this definition. It's a foundational piece for their action plan to develop their life. And that requires practice, which leads to mastery. Repetition is the mother of skill, right? And so here's what I want you to think about. Amateurs practice so that they can get it right. Professionals or masters practice so that they can't get it wrong. Right? And that's being learning based. And here's the other thing about being learning based. When I talk about jack of all trades, master of none, right? A good example would be, and this is no judgment on somebody that's like this, because I think it's actually kind of cool. You definitely want them on your trivia team, but it's somebody who knows a lot of things, but they just know those things. They've never actually used those things for anything. In other words, they know for knowing's sake, which is a trivial pursuit. Not a play on words there. Knowing for knowing's sake is a trivial pursuit. So if you want to win Jeopardy, you should just know a bunch of things that you never put into action. If you have a desire to actually be a high achiever, you want to know for doing's sake, right? You don't want to end up with really smart bookshelves and no success to show for it. You don't want to be the smart person who has always underachieved versus the person who's achieved at the highest level and no one ever took him as the smart person. That's the difference, right? Everyone has access to the knowledge, but it's those that will use the knowledge for doing's sake that will achieve success. Does that make sense? You guys know these people? They're like super smart, but they've never achieved much. Yeah, we know these people, right? There's no judgment around it. We're learning here. And I also know people that no one would have thought of as smart, and they've achieved at the highest level. You guys know people like that too. Turns out they are actually smart, but no one would have guessed that. And it's because when they learn things, they work to master them, and they learn those things for the sake of doing something with what they've learned, right? So step 4 is being learning based. And this means continually and forever. Right? So we'll recap that one. High achievers make training, education, and self-development the foundational piece of their action plan to achieve their goals. Make training, education, and self-development the foundational piece of their action plan to achieve their goals. Awesome. So the next one, we got 2 more to go here. We're gonna take her home. The next one is a pretty cool one, and also another challenging one. I'd say these are all challenging, but this one particularly, removing limiting beliefs. Removing limiting beliefs. And here's what we mean by that. You need to clear your mind of limiting beliefs before you can actually develop at a higher level, right? Again, when we talk about thinking at the foundation of the control triangle, you've got to remove limiting beliefs. Right? So here's some things that might be in your head, right? I don't have enough time for training. I can't be successful in this market. There's no way I can devote 3 hours a day to lead generation. Those are examples of limiting beliefs, and we've got to get rid of those, right? There's no way that I can have a virtual appointment with someone. Limiting belief. We're having one right now, right? And here's what I want you to think of as you think through removing limiting beliefs from your thinking that can hold you back. I'll give you an analogy, right? Where we do this really well as parents, and we do it generally really poorly as individuals. In other words, most of you as good, strong parents, those of you that are parents, so you'll understand the concept at the least, you wouldn't allow your kids to continue to say things like, well, I just can't do it. I'm just not smart enough. Right? I can't do this. I can't do that, or I'll never amount to anything. Right? Those are things that if we heard our kids say, we would stop them in their tracks and have a really great conversation as a parent about, hey, you can do anything you set your mind to. Right? You're capable of anything you want to accomplish. I believe in you. You have everything you need, knowledge, skills, opportunities, resources to accomplish what you want. Right? We do that really well as parents. We do it naturally because we hear it when our kids who we believe in and we want to have great lives, successful lives, we hear it, so we point it out. Is that fair? And yet, is it also fair that we sometimes fall in the trap of thinking those same things about ourselves? Right? Well, this market's just too tough, or I don't have enough time for training, or I can't devote 3 hours a day to lead generation. None of that's true. We want to say things like, if I put the time in for training now, I'll reap long-term benefits in my business. A shifted market is the very best opportunity for gaining market share. I can't afford to miss 3 hours of lead generation. That's my future. Those are removing limiting beliefs and thinking about all three of those things as examples in a different way. So what I want you to do is think about, I want you to really pay attention to the conversations you're having with yourselves, the words that you're using around yourselves. And right now, particularly in an uncertain kind of time in real estate and in the world, these things can tend to creep back in. Even if we've spent time and years getting them out of our heads, sometimes they can creep back in. That's okay, right? You should be able to identify them quicker, acknowledge that they're there, and work to remove them, right? How can you think differently about what you can accomplish? How can you act as if you were parenting yourself for just a minute and remove that limiting belief so that it's out of your way? Because otherwise it will hold you back, right? So we're going to do another short activity here around limiting beliefs because we've all had them. And by the way, we've all removed them at some point in our lives and had success because of removing it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have kind of a discussion around this. We're going to take just a couple minutes, and I really need your engagement here. This is where everyone can get a lot of value by you participating. Think of a time in your life when you had a limiting belief that you needed to remove. How did you do it? And what new success came your way once you did? Right? Something that you thought you couldn't do, you got that out of your way. And then how did you get it out of your way, and what happened around success as a result? Think about that for a minute, and I'd love for a couple people to share. While you're thinking, anybody got one off the top of their head? Time in their life where they removed a limiting belief.
I have one. So I was getting into the real estate business in general. I was in oil sales for 12 years, and that's what I thought I was going to be doing forever. And it got to a point where I realized I wanted to be doing something else. So I just decided to do it.
That's awesome, man. And what was the process you went through to kind of get that thought that you couldn't do it out of your head? What were some of the practical steps you took?
I researched. I did a lot of research on the market and what it would take. And then I sat down and talked to 5 or 6 real estate agents and just kind of got the process of how it works and kind of became comfortable with it. Awesome.
And I know, Patrick, that you closed and pended 5 deals in your first 3 months in the business. Mm-hmm. And so, that's a fast start by anyone's measure. So that's a success that kind of came after you got this limiting belief out of your way. You took action, right? Once that was out of your head, and then have had that early on success in your career and continuing that. That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing. Who else has got one they want to share?
I have the same pretty much as Patrick. I worked as a hairstylist for close to 20 years, and it's always scary just leaving a comfortable place. I worked for the same company for 20 years. So stepping out and just taking a risk has been a little scary, but got past that and did it, and I'm happy I did, and I'm still learning and growing.
Awesome. And we all have these moments, right, that we've gone through at some point where we removed a limiting belief. And so remembering back on how we did that, right? Patrick talked about research, talked about finding other people that have done it, understanding a little bit more about how to do it. And then we have successes on the other side, right? I remember I was always fearful of being successful because I was scared that it would negatively impact my family life, right? Which is the most important thing on the planet to me, my family. And so I had a limiting belief that you couldn't do both. You couldn't be successful. You couldn't make tons of money. You couldn't run a whole bunch of big businesses and have a great family life. That was my limiting belief. And so I started seeking out people that had both, that were doing both, and learning how they did that. And I've pursued that ever since. And it's allowed me to own some pretty darn big businesses and have a certain level of success, but also still spend the time with my family and do the things with them that are ultimately most important to me, and do those things simultaneously. So we all have these limiting beliefs. We've got to remove them or they'll hold us back from success. Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. I appreciate that. Now here's number 6. And I talked about this one being the most missed. So we're going to spend a little time on this one, and that's being accountable. Being accountable. So what's the opposite of accountable? Being accountable. Any guesses? What's the opposite of being accountable? Actually being a victim, right? The opposite of being accountable is being a victim. And that's a strong word, right? I get that. Like, whoa, that might strike you one way or another, but being a victim looks a lot different than being accountable. And here's what it actually looks like. We'll talk about what it looks like here. So here's what a victim does. They don't seek reality. They actually fight reality. They blame. They create a lot of personal excuses. And they wait and hope. Now, do you see in our world right now people acting like a victim? And don't look at the word victim. Look at this is how that person acts. They're not seeking reality. They're actually fighting reality. A lot of blaming happening, right? No matter what side of the aisle you're on, there's a lot of blaming happening. Nothing new there. Personal excuses. Well, we'll just wait it out. We'll wait and hope. One of these deals. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope things turn out well. That's acting like a victim versus acting accountable, being accountable. An accountable person seeks reality. Then they acknowledge it. They say this is actually happening. They own it. They don't blame anyone else. They own it. They find solutions. And then they get on with it. This is how an accountable person acts. This is critical to exactly what we're going through right now. The reality is we have to stay at home and the office is closed. I've acknowledged that, right? As the person who runs the office, or technically within 48 hours of the announcement last night by the governor, right? That's the reality. I own it. The office is closed. I've got to get my home office ready and find solutions. Whiteboard, Zoom call, whatever it is, right? And then I got to get on with it. You know, you heard Noah share, he's now going to set one virtual appointment per day. Right? We can't say, well, what if this thing lasts 2 weeks? What if this thing lasts 2 months? None of us know. It doesn't matter. Thinking that way leans us back over to the victim side versus what are we going to do about it? What are my solutions and how can I get on with it regardless of, again, things I can't control. Remember the control triangle. There's lots of things I can't control. There's only a few things I can control, and those are what matter. Right? So 2 things. One is there's an incredible book. I might have it here. If I walk too far away from the computer, my headset will disconnect. The book is Extreme Ownership. Extreme Ownership. It is an incredible book, a powerful book around exactly the title, taking extreme ownership, which is the same as being accountable. So if you haven't read that book, please do, right? It can be life-changing, because here's the reality. We can all slip back into victim. It can happen. It does happen to the best of us, to all of us on occasion. We need to be aware of it. We need to be aware of what it sounds like, what it looks like, so we can quickly move back to being accountable. And this book is just another resource to help with that. And here's the other thing. My coach told me one time, his name's Mike Fleming. He actually used to be the CEO of Payless Shoes way back in the day. And he's coached me now for 5.5 years for 30 minutes a week. I wouldn't quite call him like a second father to me, but he's darn close, right? He's been a powerful mentor in my life, and I owe a lot of my success to Mike and the way he's taught me to think and act, the accountability he's brought into my life. And I remember one time, just a few years back, I was asking Mike, I said, Mike, I really need you to hold me more accountable to the things I need to do each day. I need you to be harder on me around, these calls I'm supposed to make and these appointments I need to set. Like, I really need you to just hold my feet to the fire more than I feel like you're doing, right? And he said something to me that was really powerful. He said, you cannot hold unaccountable people accountable. You cannot hold unaccountable people accountable. And it made me think, am I an accountable person? Will I act like an accountable person? Accountability actually starts internally, right? I seek reality, I acknowledge reality, I own it, I find solutions, and I get on with it. That all starts internally. And then applying accountability externally is like adding gasoline to an internal accountable fire. Does that make sense? Right? I really want you to think about that, right? Accountability starts internally, finishes externally, fire, gasoline. And that can help you accomplish things that you probably never thought you would. I certainly know that Mike, as an example, has helped me accomplish things I never would have imagined. Never would have dreamed that I could accomplish with accountability, with teaching me that accountability started internally first, and then he could help me with it. But you can't hold unaccountable people accountable. Okay? This is critically important for what we're going through in the moment, right? Understand these three things. Accountability is an attitude and an approach. An attitude and approach. I started with the control triangle today for a reason. Is there's a lot right now that's in our face happening that's outside of our control, but there's plenty that's inside of our control, and that has to be our attitude and our approach. Accountability is a tool for changing the results in your life, accomplishing things you never thought you would, never thought you could. Those are limiting beliefs. We get those out, we become accountable internally, we add accountability externally, we can accomplish all those things. And it's a dynamic cycle, not a static concept. In other words, accountability is something that's important forever and in all things. Forever and in all things. And I'll show you what I mean here as an example. So high achievers are diligent about being accountable, and they have someone holding them accountable on a regular basis. You see there? Internally, externally. I'm diligent about being accountable. I have someone holding me accountable on a regular basis. And that can be in all areas of life and forever, right? Like we talked about. So here's an example. This is an example of what we call the people in Mo's box. And Mo is Mo Anderson, who's the former CEO of Keller Williams. She's vice chairman of the board, and she's really like our cultural leader of the company and has been for a long time. She's a really powerful woman. And what you'll see is that she has someone holding her accountable in the financial, spiritual, physical, and business areas of her life, in all these different areas. And let me ask you, why do you think she has different people in these different areas of life? Why might that be?
Well, the reality is that, the financial person may not be the right person when it comes to the physical well-being, right? Like each person that she has accountable is an expert in that area.
Bingo. Bingo. They're different people have different expertise in different areas, right? Now, one important thing that all these people have in common is they're coaches. They're coaches with expertise in their specific areas, right? And so a trained coach, a trained professional will provide the kind of true accountability that you just won't achieve through a friend, a colleague, or even a mentor. Those things are important, friends, colleagues, and mentors, don't get me wrong, but they're not trained to hold you accountable in such a way that adds as much value, right? And this is why people, when sometimes you'll ask who their accountability partner is, they'll say it's one of their friends. And by the way, that's better than nothing, but it's not the same as a trained professional, trained coach. And it just never will be. So just understand that, right? An example that I oftentimes use is the relationship that I have with even my father, right? So my dad and I are really close, and I have a lot of respect for the guy. I probably would have him hold me accountable or even coach me in areas like being a great parent or being a great husband, because I believe that he's both of those things. I probably would not, I would not have my dad coach or guide me or hold me accountable in business. Because he was not a business person. He's retired sheriff's department, right? Now that's no judgment around my dad. That's not an area of expertise for him, right? That he can hold me accountable in. So that's an example of finding an expert in each area. And then my suggestion is, over time, if necessary, find a professional expert in each area to hold you accountable. So here's what I want to do. Here's you. Instead of Mo, here's you. So draw this out on your paper or write down these 4 areas: financial, spiritual, physical, and business. And write down who is holding you accountable. If you don't have anyone in these key areas, and I'm guessing we all don't, write down who it might be. Who do you know that it could be or might be that's an expert or professional in those areas? Brainstorm around who it could be. You don't have anyone in those areas, and you can't yet identify who someone might be for you in one of those areas. Here's another tough question for you to sit on or think about. Why are you avoiding accountability in that area of your life? That's a heavy one. Why might you be avoiding accountability in one of those areas of your life? That's a journal question, folks. We talked about that earlier in the training, but spend some time thinking about that. Why are you avoiding having accountability in that area? And your time spent thinking on that will bring you a really high return. It's probably not an easy question to answer, so it might take some time. But I'm going to encourage you to be accountable. Remember, the most successful people on the planet have accountability in a lot of areas of their life. You look at a professional athlete, for example, right? They've got a coach, a nutritionist, a trainer, a wealth advisor, etc. Right? They have someone that's a professional holding them accountable in all these areas. They're not just successful by accident, right? They're purposeful about finding accountability. Even though they may be very gifted in some of these areas, they still have people holding them accountable. So if the most gifted people on the planet need accountability from professionals, I would say the rest of us do too, right? And remember, accountability is someone holding you accountable to your goals, not someone telling you what to do. That's very different. Okay, so let's recap. These are the 6 personal perspectives. These are the foundational perspectives of how we think, in order that then we can spend our time doing the right things, spend our time around the right people, and achieve whatever we classify as success in our lives. And here they are. So I'm going to run through them one more time. First is commit to self-mastery. Not easy and one of the most important. Self-mastery will lead you to eventually mastering these other principles or perspectives rather. So I'm going to nail this. I'm going to master this, self-mastery. Number 2, commit to the 80-20 principle. I'm going to focus on my big rocks. I understand not everything matters equally. Step 3, move from E to P, move from entrepreneurial to purposeful. I'm purposeful about breaking through my ceiling of achievement. I understand it will feel uncomfortable, all those words we wrote down, but I'm purposeful about doing it with the 5-step process we covered regardless. Step 4, I make being learning based the foundation of my action plan. I'm willing to be taught. I always pursue learning. There's always something I do not know. And remember, I pursue learning for doing sake, unless I want to win Jeopardy as my goal in life, and then maybe not. But other than that, we got to learn for doing sake. Step 5, removing our limiting beliefs. Unlimiting my thinking so I can unlimit my success. Parenting myself to not limit the way that I think, right? And then step 6, which we just covered, be accountable. It's mine, I own it. My success journey is mine, I own it. I'm accountable. I'm accountable internally, and I find accountability externally to support that. Gasoline and fire. Any questions or comments? Was today helpful? Did it bring you value?
Yes, today is awesome. I have heard this from you before, and it's been my favorite thing. And every time I hear it, I get more and more out of it. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that.
It's my pleasure. If anyone needs these slides, get a hold of me. I'll send them right to you. This is recorded, so if you want to go back and watch it or forward it to someone else who wasn't able to make it, or someone asks you about it, we can send them the recording. Remember, this is a journey. Like, this doesn't happen overnight. This doesn't happen after this hour and a half of training even. This is a way of life, right? A journey of life that there really is no destination for. So don't be hard on yourself if you don't feel like you're there yet. None of us are there yet, nor will we ever be. Anything else? Closing comments as we wrap up? You guys are awesome. Be accountable. Go get her done. If you need anything from me, you know how to reach me. If you don't yet, I'm easy to find. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Chase.
Thanks, Chase. Bye.